Being here. Obviously, you know, I'm Senator Flanagan, the minority leader of the Republican Conference, and I'm joined by my excellent colleague and friend and the senator from Rome, Utica area, the deputy leader of our conference, Senator Joe Griffo. And we are delighted to have Senator Rich Giardino from Fulton County.
Don't say Senator. Senator Tedesco will get
Oh,
upset.
I'm sorry.
Senator Tedesco will get upset if he hears you introduce me.
I just demoted you. I apologize. No, but the sheriff is here, and we're very grateful. He's got a very busy day, but we wanted to have some conversation about things that are looming out there, what's going on, the prospect of things that are going to be happening in the beginning of January with the criminal justice changes that were passed into law over our objection, and the ramifications of what that's actually going to mean. Senator Griffo and I have been talking about these issues with our colleagues, and we're hearing it from the average people. We're hearing it from law enforcement. We're hearing it from probation, from corrections, from criminal defense attorneys, from the DAs, and the people who are actually on the streets, in the field, having to deal with the real-life ramifications of what was passed. So I'm going to cut right to the chase and ask the sheriff if he would share some of his concerns. And it's amazing what you can learn if you actually listen to the people who are going to have to administer these laws. There's a lot of unfunded mandates. There are radical changes in discovery. And at the end of the day, we don't believe these changes in the law are going to keep people safer. We think our society and walking about the streets is going to be a bigger challenge than it was before. It's extremely costly. Sheriff.
First of all, my last name is Giardino, Giardino. I'm the Fulton County Sheriff. Just by way of background, I was a former county court judge and acting Supreme Court judge for 20 years, and I was a former district attorney. And between jobs, I was a defense attorney for a little while. So I've seen the system from every angle. I'm here representing the New York State Sheriff's Association as a member of the executive board. We've raised issues across the state, the chiefs of police, the sheriffs, the district attorneys. We've been accused of fear-mongering. It's really not fear-mongering. There's a lot of issues that are going to impact the public in ways they're not even aware of at this point. I'll give you just a couple of quick examples that the public needs to be aware of. As the law is currently written, if somebody burglarizes your house, in New York State it's a Class C violent felony. A person could face 15 years if they were convicted. So if you come home and you catch somebody in your home, you call 911 and we catch them coming out of your home with your property and arrest them, it's a C violent felony, but the way the law is written, we have to give them an appearance ticket in most cases. So we'll issue them an appearance ticket. They will be out the door before you get back home after you give your statement at the police agency or the sheriff's. Another situation is if you have a house next to you where you think people are dealing drugs and you see all these cars coming every 5 minutes, and we do a stakeout and we do some undercover buys, and we have them on multiple felonies, B, nonviolent felonies for selling cocaine or heroin. We have to give those individuals we arrest appearance tickets. We can't use monetary bail, as has been the case across the state. Those are just two of the highlights with the bail that concerns me. I think there's a lot of ramifications that come with bail. Currently, many of you are familiar with drug courts or drug treatment courts, or have heard of them or seen graduations or filmed them. Drug treatment courts were started in 1979 by Janet Reno, who was a state's attorney in Florida, later to become the Democratic Attorney General. They went across the country. One of the things about drug treatment courts is, the concept is if somebody is using drugs or committing a crime while they're on drugs or alcohol, DWIs, multiple DUIs, we offer them treatment, appearances before the court, drug testing, but the premise is based on they either go to jail or they go to treatment. By reducing cash bail, there's going to be a whole class of individuals who were, we say coerced into treatment. We're going to lose that aspect. So many of the people, they spent 30 years developing drug courts in New York, and one of the components was that when people were at their low point, being arrested and in jail is a low point, they would seek help. With discovery, we have some concerns across the state of the time limits. I'm in a rural county, as are most of the sheriffs upstate are rural counties. If If we have a domestic violence incident in a home, in a village, or in one of our towns, you could have the sheriff's department respond, you could have the state police respond, and you have the village police respond. The state police don't have video cameras. We have car cameras, and some villages have body cameras. All that data has to be collected and given to the district attorney, so it's provided within 15 days of arraignment. We can't give it to the DA on the 15th day. We have to get the materials and provide it early. From that aspect, that's just trying to highlight one of the problems. To us, this is an unfunded mandate. I have a small department with 19 road patrol officers. I currently have, in preparation for this, a sergeant and a captain gathering the videotapes, gathering the documents, and gathering the 911 calls. So what we're looking for, from our standpoint, the sheriffs and law enforcement, is a little breather to work 3 to 6 months out, to work with the legislature, work with the governor, work with the Senate, and see what we can do to make it more practical instead of dropping two of the largest reforms on the criminal justice system at the same time. What I'm going to do is turn it back to the senator, thank them for inviting me. Then I'll take some questions later on when you have questions. I don't want to go on and on, but what my fear is, as a sheriff and a former judge and a DA, is that when these laws are implemented next year at such a rapid rate, you're going to see cases getting dismissed because of clerical errors. Here's another clear example. Today, if we arrest somebody for selling cocaine and we do a field test, that's good enough to hold them for discovery and good enough for the DA to say they're ready to proceed. Under the new law, we have to get the lab test back from the state police lab, and that can run on a routine drug case. That can run anywhere from 2 to 3 or 4 months, depending on how backlogged they are. So that's a dramatic change that's going to affect the system. So I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Flanagan.
Thank you. And really want to express our appreciation to the sheriff. You know, Senator Griffo and I were here, I hearken back to when we all worked on Raise the Age. And there was a lot of consternation about what was going to happen during that time frame. And I will give credit to the governor, but also give strong credit to the members of our conference, who at that time included Senator Gallivan, Senator Lanza, and some others from our conference, who were actively and intimately involved in negotiations with the executive. And there was a tremendous amount of transparency. And there were real legitimate concerns raised about timing, implementation, costs. And I think there was much more proper detail paid to what that was going to mean and how it would be implemented. I don't know if this is like a hat trick in the sense that we have a former DA, a former judge, and now a gentleman who serves with distinction as a sheriff. This is right at the street level. He knows exactly what's going on. And I have a list here among my own notes of probably at least 60 to 70 crimes for which there will no longer be bail. And again, at the end of the day, we think this is highly problematic. I've listened to our Democratic colleagues in both houses. I've listened to the majority who's saying, basically, pshaw, we're not doing anything. We're not going to revisit these reforms. Where I live, I was talking to a corrections officer who said they're going to release at least 300 people right into the town of Riverhead. And no one is prepared for that. And no one is prepared for the cost. Nassau County just admitted that they're spending at least $5 million on an unfunded mandate. I don't know how the governor, with a straight face, can talk about the fact that this is not going to cost any more money and that it should be done within existing resources. You're hearing it firsthand of what it's going to mean to a rural county. That can be magnified for some of the larger counties, including the one that I reside in, Suffolk County. So even though it's this time of year, and a lot of people are paying attention to other things, we are going to lay down the gauntlet again and say there should be a pause in terms of what's being implemented by the governor and by the Democrats. And in essence, what you get with one-party rule. We have a lot of other issues that we're talking about. I just want to highlight quickly, and then in deference to the sheriff, see if there are any questions. You know, we're at a point in time where you're looking at a $6.1 billion deficit and maybe even then some. We want to reiterate that our position is no new taxes, and we have an overspending problem. That's what we need to be focusing on and making difficult choices. And I stand on firm ground suggesting that because the last time the Democrats were in charge, this is what happened. We got back the majority. We didn't raise taxes. We made difficult choices at the time, and it proved to be beneficial to the state in the long run. So we have a lot of things that we are looking at in terms of the end of the year and as we come into next year. And as all of you know, we have a much different governmental calendar than we did just this past year. We stand ready. Senator Griffo and I are here in Albany working on issues that are important to our constituents. Thank goodness we have people in law enforcement who will be working around the clock every single day to address the concerns of the people of the state of New York. So, Senator Griffo, you want to add anything? Or? Okay.
I do have two things to add, Senator.
Please.
I want to be clear about this, and I think the senators would join myself in this statement. The sheriffs I've spoken with, the DAs I've spoken with, and the chiefs all agree that we need reform for bail and discovery. But everybody wants it to be reasonable reform. And reasonable means don't shove it on us that we have to have everything done at the same time. It's going to create a lot of problems in the smaller areas and even in the large communities. The Attorney General, who's a Democrat, has said that she needs over $10 million extra to handle these new laws. So I want to be clear. We're not saying we don't want bail reform and there aren't bail nightmares, or we don't want discovery reform. As a judge, I was a big advocate of turning more information over earlier so defense attorneys and defendants could make an informed decision. But it's about giving some breathing space so we can look at it. Another problem that's not contemplated for, all of you or any of you who've done stories on jails or prisons know that the vast majority of individuals in our jails and prisons or commit crime have some level of mental health issues. They're not all diagnosed as schizophrenic or bipolar, but they have many mental health issues. This law does not provide any money for the day we open the door and let these individuals out into the community. And one thing that's put me in an unusual box, when I was a DA and a judge, I always thought, and as a sheriff, I didn't think that we should be a holding cell for people with mental health issues and other problems. But when people are incarcerated in New York State, they get medical attention, they get dental, they get mental health help that they don't get if they're on the street, and they won't get themselves. So one of the things about this is we're letting individuals back out into the community without a plan for them, without treatment, and without funding that's going to be involved in this. And many of the people in my jail I would call homeless in a sense that they don't have their own apartment or their own house. They bounce from place to place. In major suburban areas, and I know in Senator's district, we have pockets of poverty where individuals don't have a place to go. So none of this has been thought out in a humane way, if that's what the whole point of this is. So are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Questions?
Any questions on this? Senator Flanagan, I assume that you've been in contact with the leader and as to whether or not they're open to any kind of change to this. What is the message you're getting from the Democrats?
Well, it doesn't have to be in conversations with me. The majority leader has made it clear that they have zero interest in revisiting this. I think that's extremely unfortunate. And again, you don't have to take our word for it as sitting elected officials, although after all the time I've been here, I think I have a pretty good understanding. And I'm going to go to something so incredibly simple. We need to listen to the people who are actually going to be doing the legitimate work. I mean, you heard the sheriff now twice. I mean, his acumen and his experience, they should be talking to him. I think that was missed, and an opportunity was missed, and he was very sincere, as are we. We're not adverse to reform, but don't jam it down people's throats. And I think part of this is the Democrats saying, we're not giving up. We're not giving anything back. We did what we did. We're sticking by it. I respect that, but I vehemently disagree with it as well. I don't think this is going to be in the interest of the average person and the taxpayers and the constituents that we represent. People are going to be less safe.
John, do you imagine this being an electoral issue in 2020?
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
Electoral issue. Is this something you're going to campaign on in 2020?
Absolutely. I'm already campaigning on it, and I think we have every right and obligation to do so. And, you know, now when the Democrats took over in the majority, there was a lot of theorizing as to what they were going to do, and they've taken very hard steps, which they're entitled to do. But I know the role of being the loyal opposition. I not only need to speak up and speak out with Senator Griffo, who does a lot of our work on the floor, but yeah, we're going to be making this, because we now have people coming to us. I mean, I talked to local people who are involved in local races in November. Pretty interesting. If you're running for county legislature, you're running for a town or village spot, and you're talking about state issues, that to me is an indication that people are paying a lot more attention than they were even 6 months ago. Now we're at the precipice of this actually being implemented. I think people are paying more and more attention. I'm going to use myself as an example and use my office. I don't think I'm any different than any one of my colleagues. When you get a certain amount of people that call on an issue, that's one thing. When you get a certain amount of people that call with more passion and more fervor than they do on, say, a stop sign in their community, to me, that's an indication of what people are thinking. And now when this is going to come into being, unfortunately, they're going to go to somebody like the sheriff and say, what are you doing? And he's going to have to say, I'm actually administering the law because I have an obligation to do so. So yes, we are going to campaign on this very hard, and I am unabashed in suggesting that I will do that as an elected official, and I think all of our candidates will be doing that next year as well.
I was going to answer your question about the political end of it, and I think both senators will back me up on this. As a sheriff, I'm a Republican conservative on my ballot, but we've had police chiefs, DAs, and sheriffs who are Democrats, who are independents, who are Republicans and conservatives, who uniformly say, put the brakes on, let us discuss this. So as far as Republican and Democrat, for elections maybe, but who's asking to put the brakes on is the Democratic DA in Albany County, the Democratic DA in Schenectady County, Mr. Carney. There's some Democratic sheriffs who've also, Craig Apple, who is a Democratic sheriff, who's asked, just slow it down, there's some modifications. And I guess the only thing I would say is in a frame of logic, if you see something and you know there's going to be problems with it, and you know there's some tweaks you could do to make it better, do you implement it and then worry about it later, or do you try to slow it down and fix it ahead of time? My logic says you try to slow it down and fix it ahead of time. Just a simple thought.
Senator, if the Assembly leader and the Senate leader have said no way, delay, what is the point in continuing to ask for delay? Or alternately, do you see any scenario in which they would be open to revisiting?
Well, let me go to the first part of the question. The point is, this is my job. The point is, this is Senator Griffo's job. And we're not dancing, we're not walking on this. And simply because something has been enacted into law, I'm not going to go blithely along with the implementation of the law if I think it's going to be disastrous. I mean, we all look at criminal justice events that take place, and the sheriff raised really a subcomponent of this that is extremely important, mental health issues. So first of all, it's just not my personality. Second of all, I'm not going to stand idly by, and none of our colleagues are going to do so as well. The point is, we're representing our constituents. The point is that these are wrong-headed policies that I think are going to come back, and people are going to go, how did that possibly happen? And I expect that we will be offering amendments and continuing to push for things like a standard of dangerousness. Senator Serino was up here a couple of weeks ago, and Senator Gallivan, and a whole slew of people who are involved in law enforcement. We are going to press very hard because I want the average person that I represent, and I'm no different than any of my colleagues. And by the way, I think this is Republican and Democrat. I want people in Smithtown or Comac or in Rome or in Utica to be able to say, hey, Griffo or Flanagan is up there pushing for me, trying to protect my life and liberty and provide a balance that is beneficial to, your average person in our districts.
And do you see any scenario in which this gets revisited later this next session, or do you see any possibility of that at this point?
I'm going to choose my words very carefully. I hope nothing bad happens. I truly hope nothing bad happens. But I'm fearful that something will. And some type of egregious incident or event could be, precipitate legislative action. And by the way, that's not unusual. And it's not just in criminal justice. It's the nature of government, I think, to a certain extent. I don't want to see that happen. So I want to be fair to under what scenarios. I think if we continue to mount pressure, it's not out of the realm of possibility for the continued, foot on the throttle to be pressing these issues and to get the support of the public to be pushing for this as well. So I'm hopeful.
Senator, are you now implying that you would take a case in which a person got out of jail and previously would have been held and committed some egregious act, you would then use that as a political tool to move the needle in the other direction on bail reform?
No, that's not a political tool. That's real life. If someone comes out and under the old law they would have been held on bail and they go out and commit some heinous act, that's not political. That's real life. That's what my constituents will expect, that I will stand up for and say, you need to change the law. Well, Senator Griffo said accountability, so I view that as governmental and I view that as representing my constituents. If you want to construe it as being political, that's your prerogative, but I do not view it that way.
Anything else? Senator, what do you say to people who have said similar reforms have gone into effect in Jersey and this guy has come down?
Oh, that is a great question. This is nothing like what happened in New Jersey. It's far more sweeping in its breadth and scope and structure. It is not what happened in New Jersey. And I see the sheriff nodding his head to my left. He knows. And I've seen articles written on this, making direct comparisons. This is not New Jersey. And by the way, I don't care what state it is. All I want to focus on is what's going to happen in the state of New York. Yeah, we can look at other states maybe as a template, but I will not accept the comparison of apples to apples with New Jersey. It just doesn't work.
New Jersey allows for some of the items that the judges can review when they make a determination on bail. So it's not apples to apples. New Jersey still allows a lot of the things that we could consider in determining bail. When I say we, I mean the judiciary. I did want to mention one other thing about discovery, because you asked the question about, and Senator Griffo said accountability. Under the discovery rule, if somebody in your household gets raped by somebody who breaks in, then the defendant, the accused who gets arrested, has a right to come visit your house where the crime occurred. So the New York State has just spent 40 years trying to make victims' rights prominent in the criminal justice system. And if somebody in your family were raped, and this is a true scenario, I'm not making this up, a defendant has a right to apply to a court to come visit your house where the rape occurred with their attorney. The DA can be present and the law enforcement officers can be present, but flies against everything we've done to protect victims. There's really no need to go into somebody's house. You look at the photographs of the scene, they can take a videotape and have somebody turn it over to them, but there's nothing beneficial to a victim who's been abused in their own house by somebody from outside coming back into their house. And it's traumatizing them a whole nother time. And that's a real life scenario that can happen.
Last thing I would add, and I want to, if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. I'm fairly certain, and in New Jersey, part of the reforms was the offering of a constitutional amendment that would allow for more power to be granted to law enforcement personnel like the district attorney. That is not the case in New York, not even close. Thank you very much. Yancey?
Other topics? Just brief, okay?
I'm done Christmas shopping, if you want to know.
No, we've talked about this before, there's been a number of retirements from the GMP centers. So I just want to ask are both you and Senator Griffo both running for re-election?
I can speak for myself. I was asked that question. The simple answer is yes.
I don't participate in surveys, but I'm presently entertaining that, obviously. We're here, but I don't believe in the surveys that I've traditionally never been involved in surveys that are conducted as to what you're going to do on a particular issue or what you're going to do relative to your future intentions. But presently, that's my intention.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a great holiday.